Chelsea, can you take us like just for anybody who's like, why the hell are they bringing up this novel? Just quickly like take us. I sort of gave like the Crip Notes version of it. Can you just take us through this novel, like through the plot? Like what is the plot of this novel?
Yeah, no problem. And thank you for letting Steve Bannon do that work that he did, working so hard in that clip for us, so that I don't have to. So yes, as you introduced it, it's a 1973 dystopian French novel. It's by the author Jean Raspail. And this novel has become a key inspiration within white nationalist circles. It depicts a fictional, and I will insist on this throughout our discussion, a fictional apocalyptic event in which a flotilla of non-white immigrants from South Asia invade France's southern coast. They sack this unnamed coastal city by the novel's end and bring about the end of the West, which is to say white Western civilization. Something that's really important to note, though, about the plot is that it's informed by Raspail, the novelist who is now deceased, his deeply conservative Catholic royalist religious political affiliation. Because the novel takes its title that Steve Bannon repeated again and again and again, the Camp of the Saints, the Conte des Saints, based on the apocalypse of John in the Book of Revelation. So it's that in the Book of Revelation, we have this prophecy of the arrival of apocalyptic hordes who gather in an assault on the holy city. And so Raspail adapts this biblical parable to 1970s France. And so he depicts and he critiques 1970s France. He's deeply, deeply critical of the present day Western civilization. The unprepared French army, the divided Catholic Church, and the foolish, compassionate Pope, the French elite, communist hippie youth, and the nameless, faceless masses of North African and sub-Saharan immigrants that are already packed into France as he depicts them. And then the half-naked, only half-human hordes of migrants from South Asia who are, the novel is just this sort of like ticking time bomb of them arriving. And I guess just one other thing that's really important to know about this novel, again, Raspail in his interviews sort of has depicted it as a parable, but then also as reality, and sort of as the political winds have shifted, his presentation of what he was doing shifted. But he really frames this as a crisis of migration. And in a subsequent afterword, and I'm just going to quote from it to really drive this home, he said about migrants and a migrant crisis, I quote, "To let them in would destroy us. To reject them would destroy them." And so he's critiquing sort of this notion of compassion or of charity, because it will mean the end of the West. And of course, that means white Western civilization. And I think Steve Bannon sort of hitched his wagons to all of that in that clip that you showed.
Geez, I mean, it's a remarkable text in its sort of bold-faced racism and white supremacy. And I wonder why is the novel so important? What is it about its release in the 1970s that meant years later it would have this enduring sort of attraction to right-wing thinkers, and that right-wing thinkers would see this as a text that is definitive of the problem for whites across the world?
Sadly, I think the answer is that it was as meaningful for white nationalists in 1970 as it is today. And I think that context is really important. So I'll give a little bit on that. I mean, one thing is that in addition to this afterword that he penned, the preface to the novel, like it's this fictional biblical parable, okay. But the preface that he writes, and it's not a fiction, it's the author's preface, and it's just very short. And I'm going to quote, "We need only glance at the awesome population figures predicted for the year 2000, i.e. 28 years from now, 7 billion people, only 900 billion of whom will be white." So he is like already in 1973 when he writes it, like packaging it as a scary warning that's real, even though it's this biblical parable. And so he's playing with that line. And so it's not because it was important. Jean-Marie Le Pen, who was the founder of the French National Front, which became the Rassemblement National, that was founded sort of in the context of Raspail penning this novel as well. And so he's seizing on so much of this contemporary thinking in the 1970s. It's this economic crisis that that was widespread in the world, but particularly in France, the end of 30 years of growth, restrictive immigration reform laws that followed in that wake. And so he's seizing on that. But I do think that the most important thing for us to understand about the current use of the novel and its continued relevance, if you will, is that it plays with this line between fiction and reality. And the most insidious thing that's happening right now is this transformation of a fictional novel into effectively a reality. And what happens when you do that? What happens when you take all of the conceits of fiction and slap them onto reality, and the real, I think, danger that creates.